Hello everyone, I'm Crizel and welcome to my channel. I remember my first and earliest experience with watercolor. I think it was very much like the experiences of other kids. I was using a watercolor palette like this to paint on a paper like this. Sadly, this experience and these materials didn't help me gain interest in painting. But now I'm painting and I really love it. Now I understand how using the right supplies will help you enjoy painting and improve on your art. In my previous video, I gave 5 tips for my fellow watercolor beginners. 3 of these tips were about the 3 most essential watercolor supplies: paint, paper, and brushes. Now, I'm going to give you a list of the other supplies that you will surely use. Since I'm from the Philippines, I really want to make suggestions that are affordable and useful for Filipino watercolor newbies. Just as a disclaimer, this is no way a sponsored video and I don't sell any of these supplies. I'm only recommending the supplies I used and the stores from which I bought them. Anyway, here we go! Watercolor paints. Watercolors come in pans, tubes, liquid form, and in pencils. I'm more familiar with the pans and tubes, so I will limit myself to those. Paints in pans are dried and hard, while paints in tubes are in thick liquid form. Choosing which one to buy and which one is better really just depends on your preference. I have watercolors in pans and tubes, and I can say that one form is absolutely better than the other. Watercolor paints come in artist grade and student grade qualities. Artist grade paints are obviously more expensive than student grade paints, and they contain pure pigments. If you're just new with watercolor painting, it's okay to just use student grade paints. In the Philippines, I know how expensive watercolors are. If you want to buy a set of student grade watercolor paints, the cheapest that I could recommend is the Prang watercolor. It comes in a set of 8 colors and a set of 16 colors. Both of these sets come with one round brush. The other watercolor brands that I would suggest that are below 1,000 pesos are Sakura Koi and Sonnet Full Pans, with the Sonnet being highly recommended for its excellent quality on such a cheap price. But if you can spend a little more than 1,000 pesos, I highly recommend going for the Winsor & Newton Cotman Skechers Pocket Box. It has 12 half pans of these colors and this tiny little brush. Be on the lookout for good deals online like in Lazada or Shopee, and you would be able to get it for less than 1,500 pesos. I bought my own set for 1,100 pesos only. If you want to try Winsor & Newton Cotman paints but you don't want to spend 1,000 pesos for it, their tubes are pretty affordable. An 8 ml tube costs 110 to 150 pesos. Watercolor paper. When I was first painting and when I was doing my initial research about watercolor papers, I didn't realize that there's so much things to know about these papers. I don't want to talk about all of these things here in this video, but what I can say is that using the right paper for painting is just as important, if not more, as choosing the right type of paint and brushes. And with watercolor painting, there's only one kind of paper you should use, and that's watercolor paper. Not printer paper, nor Oslo paper. When choosing the watercolor paper, you have to consider the weight and texture of the paper. The weight is measured either in pounds per ream or grams per square meter. These are the standard weights of paper. Basically, the higher the number, the thicker the paper. I think the most popular and the one I also prefer is the 140 pound or 300 GSM paper. Don't buy papers lighter than 120 pounds or 200 GSM. These papers will buckle and warp a lot, and that's not going to help you have an enjoyable painting experience. Watercolor papers come in 3 different textures: hot pressed, cold pressed, and rough. Hot pressed paper has a smooth, hard surface. This is the least absorbent among the 3. It's ideal for you if you want to create detailed work. Cold pressed paper has medium texture and absorbency. It's ideal for creating textures and adding details on your paintings. Rough paper has a prominent tooth or textured surface. It is the most absorbent and you can create high levels of texture on your paintings using different techniques on this paper. Cold press paper is my preferred type of paper and this is also highly recommended for beginners. However, it is best if you will try all of these to see which one you will actually like. Watercolor papers are available as sheets, pads, or blocks. For beginners here in the Philippines, I suggest buying your papers in sheets or pads for your practice paintings, simply because it's more affordable. I try to paint as frequent as I can and I use Canson and Fabriano watercolor paper. They are really cheap and I don't feel pressured when painting on these papers. However, there are times when I find it really challenging and frustrating to paint on these papers, especially when I'm adding a lot of washes and when I'm trying to use some techniques. This is why I started investing on 100% cotton paper. You will really notice the difference when you started using it. You will feel instantly like a better artist on this paper. However, your pockets will feel it too. These are the different prices of Arches watercolor paper in the Philippines. But don't worry, Arches isn't the only brand that has 100% cotton paper. There are other affordable brands like Paper, Caddy Paper, Saunders Waterford, and Legion Stonehenge, and they are all available in the Philippines. Watercolor brushes. There are two types of brushes according to the type of hairs, natural and synthetic. Brushes with natural hair come from animals, specifically from these creatures. Sable is the most popular type of natural hair and Kolinsky sable is the most expensive one. Natural brushes hold more water and they have memory, snap, and spring. This means they have the strength and flexibility as they quickly go back into their original shape after you use them. Synthetic brushes are made from man-made fibers like nylon or polyester. They don't last as long as the natural brushes and they hold less water. But the good thing about these synthetic brushes is that they maintain their shape well, have similar features as natural ones, and most importantly, they could get the job done for a cheaper price. What I'm currently using are synthetic brushes from Winsor & Newton Foundation, Winsor & Newton Cotman, Princeton Snap, and Royal Langnickel. I also have these affordable set of flat and round brushes. Watercolor palette. Watercolor palettes are either plastic or ceramic, and they are used for mixing pigments together. These are the first palettes that I used. They are lightweight and they have so many wells in which I could put and mix my paint. At 50 to 60 pesos per piece, they are really cheap. I also use the palettes that come with the watercolor pan sets that I have. But then I learned about using ceramic palettes and how they are so much better than plastic. So when I saw these ceramic plates on 50% sale in Landmark, I knew right away that I found my ceramic palettes. At 75 to 250 pesos per plate, I really feel it's a good deal. Since I started using them as palettes, I rarely use my other palettes. Water containers. Obviously, water is needed in watercolor painting. The number of jars used by an artist really depends on him or her. Some use 1, 2, even 3 glass jars while working. For me, I use 2 glass containers for my water during painting. One jar is for my dirty water or for rinsing my brushes, and the other is for my clean water, for loading my brush with paints. So, just to be clear, you really don't need to spend on your water containers. The ones I use, these are just old containers of food that I just cleaned. Drawing pencil or watercolor pencil? Painting requires planning and preparation too, and one of the things I do as preparation is sketching. I use this mechanical pencil or a regular drawing pencil for sketching. But sometimes, I also use watercolor pencils or colored pencils, and they just blend with your watercolor as you paint. Kneaded eraser. Kneaded erasers are perfect for lightening the pencil marks from sketching. They are gentle on your paper, therefore you don't need to worry about rubbing off some of the paper's fibers. I use this Faber-Castell kneaded eraser. I store it in a small sealed container to prevent it from getting dusty. Masking fluid. In watercolor painting, the white areas are usually planned and masking fluid is used to mask or protect that area. I use masking fluid on those small areas within a bigger area where I need to apply a wash or some blending of colors, and it's going to be complicated to paint around that area. When using a masking fluid, it is advisable to not use your good brushes and use an old one instead, as this will really destroy your brushes. Also, I dip the brush in dishwashing liquid to protect the bristles. There are colorless and colored masking fluids. For me, I prefer the colored one as I want to see where I put it. I'm using this Pebeo synthetic drawing gum. I got it from Art Bar in Serendra for 519 pesos. I have seen other brands of masking fluid that are cheaper like Lefranc, Talents, and Schminky Liquid Frisket, board or foam core, and masking tape. To prevent the paper from buckling while painting, the paper is taped on a drawing board or a support panel using a masking tape or a painter's tape. Also, these tapes provide a good white border to the paintings. I use these thick cardboards which were from the back of my old sketch pads. For the masking tape, I don't really have a specific brand. I just get mine from the bookstore or the hardware stores. Cotton rag and or paper towel. When painting with watercolor, you need a cotton rag or paper towel to wipe excess water and or paint from your brush. I use some old shirts that I cut and turn into rags because I don't want to spend lots of money on paper towels. I only use paper towel when I need to lift some paints from the paper. Example, for making clouds. So there you have it. I have just given you my top 10 essential watercolor supplies. Please take note that my top 10 list may be different from another artist's top 10, and that's just normal. Anyway, my advice to the watercolor beginners who may be using cheap stuff and wanting to upgrade, and to those who are still considering the idea of watercolor painting, is to do your research first before you go to the art supply stores or before you start adding stuff to your cart online. I'm not stopping anyone from art supply shopping because I really love art supply shopping. It's like I need to do it every month because number one, shopping is fun, and number two, shopping for art supplies is much more fun. Anyway, back to my advice. Yes, research. Painting supplies aren't cheap. In fact, the artist grade supplies, even some student grade supplies, are already pricey. So try to be responsible consumers, and one way to do this is research. Watch and read product reviews by different artists. It will help you have better choices, and it will also help you decide which supplies to buy first. Also, if you're ready to spend a little more and don't always buy the cheapest option. As a beginner, it's also not advisable and it's also not practical to spend on the most expensive supplies. Just go for the mid-range options, and in that way, you will be on the safer side when it comes to quality and all. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please hit the like button and let me know what you think about it, and please tell me if you have any watercolor topics you want me to discuss in the future videos. Please comment it down below, okay? Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click the bell to get notified every time I upload videos. Let's spread the love for watercolor painting, and I will see you again next week. Stay positive and happy painting!